Hey everybody, this is just a quick little throwaway video. It's just a POV of me in the 2006 Civic. I should also have a 2013 video already up or coming up in a second. I just have a lot of B-roll and blooper footage from the Civic versus Civic video. So I figure I'll just post that. Um, for you guys to enjoy if you so choose. Um, the Civic video ended up being a little bit rushed and a little bit under my expectations, but I hope it was still enjoyable. I have a lot more videos. I have a couple more videos about those two cars coming out pretty soon. And then I'm going to move on to some other projects that are going to be pretty cool, I think. So I hope you enjoyed. Keep leaving your feedback. I'm liking this so far, so I hope you guys are too.
Alright, here we are. Oh, that's the ceiling. Alright, here we are in the 2006 Honda Civic EX Coupe.
With the 1.8 liter.
Stop! With a 5-speed manual. I'll tell you when I want you to speak. I'm here with my buckaroo buddy Nick.
Yep.
He went to the car show with me. And if you haven't, if that video doesn't exist, it'll exist soon. So here we go. We're just going for a little drive in this thing. So, compared to the other one, the interior is really bad. I like the simplicity of the gauge is more. The tack looks better in my opinion this way. I don't like these giant, like, not cubes, they're not cubes, these giant shapes that are just for warning lights. I think those are a little bit weird looking. It has the nice bars. I like how this one is your fuel and temperature though, instead of fuel and fuel economy. There isn't really a way to gauge your fuel economy, but it's a manual, so you kind of control that yourself. So
I like how it's all driver oriented.
It is, yeah.
Design.
Well, I mean, it's not the most driver oriented, but it is very driver oriented, which is quite pleasant.
Yeah. And that's still reminiscent in the 2013
Yes.
Honda Civic.
It is a 2013. And yeah, it does feel very similar. This definitely has a lot less amenities and like nice stuff. It's definitely a older car and a less nice car. I don't know if the EX is a lower trim or not than the LX or whatever that thing is.
I'm pretty sure EX is one below SI.
It is one below SI, I think. So I think it's above LX. But regardless, I'm going really slow so they catch up to us. But regardless, this car feels decently cheap, which is sort of what you expect.
It's not a chance. It's surprising quality.
Yeah. So, driving, steering wheel. This vehicle has been affectionately dubbed the Chadmobile because previously it was owned by a man named Chad. And if you can see right up here and on the shifter, there's some very visible wear marks. That's because perhaps, but he would drive like this all day long for hours and hours and hours, which is just a Chad stance. Will tip for you manual drivers. Ooh, Forster's backing out. Don't rest your hand on the gear shift. It means you have less control over the wheel.
And a smaller penis.
Doesn't even make sense. And you push the fork, the gear shifting fork, down into the gears, which can wear it down over time. So just keep that in mind. Geez, hydroplaning time.
Whoa.
So this car is front-wheel drive, just like the other Civic. Pretty much the same drivetrain. The two cars are virtually identical, except for in aesthetics. They're almost the exact same vehicle. So there's not really much to it. So this car, just like that one, has the R18 inline-4 Honda engine with a 6,800 RPM-ish red line. It makes about 140 horsepower. And about like 120-ish pound-feet of torque, somewhere in that range. Regardless, it feels a lot better in this car, and I think that's only because it's attached to a 5-speed.
I would say it's because an older car feels cheaper and more thrilling. Like how a golf cart feels fast, a go-kart feels fast when it's not.
I think it
really is cheap and like threatens your life. Like when you're in a nice Audi or expensive car,
because you've driven an Audi.
Yeah, you don't feel the speed because it's luxurious and solid.
I get that, but I think this one is past the age of it being, you know, some tin surrounding you and you're just sort of like the 90s Civics and stuff. But
I thought that about my van, but I
yeah,
get that
that's fair.
For my van.
But this car, it's just the manual and the reviness of the engine. Granted, doesn't quite have a Honda redline that's up to par with what some people might expect from the company. But it's peppy, it's revvy, and it makes enough power to be enjoyable. So, yeah. As far as suspension feel, it's good. It's a little harder than the other Civic, the 2013, I do believe. It's a little bit harder, but the car feels a lot more throwable just because it's significantly lighter. Like that car we were talking about weighs about 3,700. This one's about, I believe, like 2,600, which is quite a difference, if that is correct. Now that doesn't mean this car is fast, because it gets to 60 in about
10 seconds?
Like 9.6 seconds or something like that. Like it's not quick by any stretch of the imagination at all. It's quite slow. But it doesn't feel slow. It feels very fun. There were some days where I would rather be driving this car than the WRX because it just feels so much more throwable and in some ways even sportier just with how direct it is. Which I know is sort of a buzzword and doesn't really mean much, but something about, you know, the smaller steering wheel with the relatively pleasant design. I don't like this giant airbag, but it feels nice in your hands. It's thinner, it's smaller, it's squishy, and easier to grab. The shifter, anyone who's driven a Honda will tell you that their shifters are pretty neat. This one's not the greatest ever. It's definitely a very long throw, as you can see, but it's very notchy, and it doesn't feel like there's it just feels very pleasant, versus the WRXs where it can be sort of hard and resist you, and you grind gears more frequently. It's harder to use. This one is very direct and responsive and pleasant. It's a very nice shifter. That's probably one of the highlights of the car, if not the highlight of the car, is the shifter. So that's a little pull there.
Experience the VTEC.
So you'll notice it makes a lot of sound, but it doesn't actually go very fast. But it's fun. It's a very fun experience. Now, as far as VTEC in this car, it has slow boy iVTEC. And as I was talking about in the other car, and I will talk about in a future video where I talk about the R18 and different forms of VTEC, it has slow boy iVTEC. And iVTEC is intelligent VTEC, and there are two varieties. There's the one in the SI, and then there's the one in these. And the one in these kicks in at about 3,000 RPM and lasts to about 5,000 RPM. And there's still all those birds. It's a lot of birds. What it does is I think, I'll explain it. They're not turkeys. No, they're definitely not. You think those are turkeys? Bruh, you're small-brained, tiny-brained, minuscule-brained.
I know. Let's set that out. I think call them turkeys.
Alright. I'm actually keeping that in. You can't stop it.
Man.
But it's definitely, what was I gonna say? Oh yeah, iVTEC. It's designed to enhance fuel economy. So, as I said in the other car, in Honda's own words, it gives this car the fuel economy of a 1.5 liter with the performance and torque of a 2-liter, at least at low RPM, which is sort of neat, I guess.
But
it
who's 1.5 liter and who's 2 liter?
Hondas, because those are the other main engines they make. They make 1.5s and they make 2 liters. As far as car engines, Honda is the biggest engine manufacturer in the world. Did you know that? Fun fact of the day. Wow. But so this is boring VTEC, which at least it's sort of cool, but it's suboptimal in many ways. But it does make me want to figure out what the SI of this generation would be like with real VTEC. But you can, if you listen carefully and you try to find it, you can sort of feel VTEC in this car. It does have a little bit of a punch at 5,000 when the slow restrictive iVTEC switches back off. It's nothing very noticeable. I'll make another video describing how this variety of VTEC feels, but it doesn't feel like much. Downshifts, nice, pleasant. It's quite easy to blip. You can't heel toe very well in this car just because of the pedal positions, but the shifter and the clutch feels very nice. The clutch feels like a toy though. The brake is a lot more responsive than the other car. It feels a lot less family sedan and a little bit more sporty. The accelerator is feather light, but it gives you decent response when you floor it. But the clutch feels like a toy, especially compared to like the WRX's clutch, which is quite heavy. This feels like nothing, literally nothing. It's incredibly light. The shifter also feels like a toy, but in a fun way. But it means that the car is very easy to drive, especially for people who are new to manuals, and I think Nick can attest to that.
Yeah.
Because he is learning to drive on this, drive manual on this car.
Very lenient.
Yes. Some other little things, the seats, a little bit more bolstered than the other one, a little bit huggier, not much. I'd say they're just about as comfortable. Seating position is good. I like it in this car. I like it more than the WRX, in fact. Because you're a little bit lower, and you're less high up, and the position is a little bit more sporty feeling. As far as the interior quality, I touched on it briefly. It's not great. It's pretty bad, really. I don't hate all black, but yeah, it's pretty plasticky.
Is that a rock?
Yeah, probably. It's not great. The turn signals and stuff are weird. They feel good, but they sort of look wacky with that little stalk and stuff. Yeah, so that's pretty much it. It does have a manual e-brake, a well-worn manual e-brake, but a manual e-brake nonetheless. So now we're pulling back in. Any thoughts, Nick, that you've had you drive this car a little bit?
It's a car. Within
That's
the car,
for sure.
This Honda Civic is a car.
It definitely
Nothing special.
is.
It gets you there, it gets you back. That's it.
Yeah. I would say this one is pretty significantly more enjoyable than the other one. At least experiencing both of them. I feel like part of it's just the fact this one's older,
Yeah.
and it makes it seem more acceptable to abuse it horribly.
Yeah.
But it just feels a little bit sportier, a little bit more fun to play around with.
I think it's enlarged due to the manual.
Yes, and then the manual makes a huge difference. Any boring car, and the Civic is the epitome of boring cars, becomes enjoyable when you put a manual in it.
Yes.
And I think Honda makes really good manual transmissions, and this attests to that, and makes this car quite enjoyable. For me, at least. There are days where I feel like I would rather be driving this than the WRX. Not that that's very frequent, but there are days.